Sit down if you want to.
Right in the middle of what's going on.
I'm in the middle of an interrogation.
Take a seat, young Skywalker.
The middle children of history, man.
Middle of the day, Alfred.
Please, take a seat there.
Right now, I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Stop the middle of the basic!
Meeting in the middle.
Like.
They fought for the freedom of
Middle.
the middle of a middle.
The middle of a war! Come on, freaking ridiculous!
Why don't we have a seat? Talk it over.
No! Not the middle seat!
Do you want to hear the very best podcast about movies that there ever was? Well, then join us here on the Middle Seats Podcast, the best seat in the house for all things movies and entertainment. I'm Andrew Auger. As always, I'm joined by Nate Lungarini and Jake Hensler. This week, we are reviewing Pokémon Detective Pikachu. We're going to discuss the movie kind of generally, then rate the movie, then jump into our spoiler section. Look for time codes in the description. Now, here's a little bit of the trailer for Detective Pikachu.
So you're a talking Pikachu with no memories who's addicted to caffeine.
I could stop whenever I want. These are just choices. Another round. Black as night. Thank you, sweetie. You can talk to humans. I can talk to Pokemon. And if you want to find your pops, we're gonna need each other.
No, I don't need a Pokemon.
What about a world-class detective? Harry is still alive. Case closed, but still open until I solve it. Now, obviously, I've dealt with this putz before. That's a twist. That's very twisty.
That was the trailer for Detective Pikachu, the first ever live-action Pokemon movie. They've made 22 animated films over the last, 2 decades, but this $150 million production is the first ever live-action iteration of the little creatures that you gotta catch all of them for. Obviously, I don't sound like the biggest fan.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, he called them creatures.
I didn't know what to say.
He acts like he just saw a possum crawl out from his garbage or something.
What are they? They're like pocket monsters, right? That's what you would call them or something?
That's the full name, yes.
What? Is that what Pokemon stands for? Wait a minute.
Pokemon stands for pocket monsters.
Oh, I had no idea. I just thought it was a cute name.
Oh, no.
As you guys can see, I'm going to need a little help this time. I can tell you what the movie's about. Let's get into that. Detective Pikachu is directed by Rob Letterman, who's kind of a kids movie vet. He's done Monsters vs. Aliens. He did the Goosebumps movie with Jack Black, the first one. He did Gulliver's Travels with Jack Black, which I almost threw up a little in my mouth talking about that one. But let's get into, obviously, Detective Pikachu. Pikachu is the lead character. Ryan Reynolds, of all people, provides the voice to the Pikachu character. He's a Pokemon with amnesia. He lives in Rhyme City, which is like kind of a Zootopia-esque society where Pokemons and humans live side by side.
Pokemon. It's not Pokemons.
There's no S. It's already plural.
Oh, my God. Man, it's like Barkhad Abdi over here in Captain Phillips.
This is my podcast, too. We're making it right.
Pikachu is the partner of Tim Goodman's father, Harry, who has disappeared. Tim, played by Justice Smith, last seen screaming his head off in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Him and Pikachu form a partnership. They're trying to find his father and crack the case of what's going on behind the scene in Rhyme City, and then they meet a lot of colorful Pokemon and characters along the way. I'm done. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Nate, what did you think of Detective Pikachu?
He's so afraid.
Oh, man. This is going to be a fun one. All right. We've talked about it briefly when we originally talked about the trailer. But yes, I am the long-term Pokemon fan, the current Pokemon fan, still focusing on leveling up my entire living Pokedex in Ultra Sun as I await for Gen 8 to come out on the Nintendo Switch. I am about as far into Pokemon as you can get.
He even lost me just now. Yeah, he starts talking about like omega symbols and hieroglyphics and
right,
and like what the Taurus sign means.
Just please don't pop quiz me at the end of this.
If you know the original 3 starters, I'll be happy if you drew.
Oh, God.
Oh, Jesus.
I'll give you time to study. So, in terms of Detective Pikachu, I was very cautiously excited just because the movie looked so bizarre. Ryan Reynolds starring live-action models that looked very true to the Pokemon designs, but did not look at all like the anime creatures they were based off of. It was a very cool mix of the two. And to top it all off, Pokemon is the highest grossing media franchise of all time. Like, period. That's insane. That beats out Marvel, that beats out Star Wars, that beats out all of the other Disney properties that we've gone on and on about for all time. Pokemon is just so far ahead of that because not only do they have the video games, they have the movies, they have the TV show, they have the action figures,
cards,
the trading card games. There is just so much that goes into the Pokemon empire. And it's actually crazy that we've waited so long to get the movie. Now, how does it stack up? The movie itself satisfied me. It didn't blow me away. It definitely is geared a lot more towards kids in a way that I feel other animated or even other kids movies in the last couple of years have done a better job at appealing to a wider audience. I think the biggest standout for me is the Lego movie, where people our age and 20s and older and little kids can appreciate the movie for its own sense of humor and amount of jokes that it had for both audiences. Detective Pikachu is definitely scaled more towards the kids, and the older audience appeal is definitely more for references to people that grew up playing the video games and may or may not be continue playing today. So we'll get into more detail as we go forward, but I was hoping that it would appeal a little bit more to a broader, older audience, and it didn't quite get there. The story was kind of weak, the human characters are kind of weak, but Ryan Reynolds absolutely slayed this movie. He was perfect. We get a lot of him. They definitely do not shortchange us on the amount of Pikachu time that we get, but I could have had more. He was so much fun.
Oh, I expected that Jake and I would just get to give ratings and go home. Jake, you were to a more minor extent a pretty big Pokemon fan.
Yeah, I was huge into Pokemon through elementary school. I think I pretty much grew out of it around 5th, 6th grade, once middle school hit. But I did play the original Pokemon Yellow on Game Boy. I played the Fire Red and Leaf Green. I have all kinds of cards and action figures. I was huge into Pokemon for my young, immediate, pre-puberty childhood. That being said, so the movie. The three of us had a teacher at Marist, and I'm going to quote him. It was a hesitant good, as he would say, good.
Of all people, on Detective Pikachu.
Well, because the thing about it, I feel like that's a perfect way to say something's good without being, excited about it. You know what I mean?
No, you're right. No, I know.
It's a hesitant good. Mm-hmm. Like Nate said, it's absolutely more geared towards kids. Anybody older than a relatively younger kid, like anybody in their teenager years or older, is going to be going more for the probably nostalgia factor, yes, they threw in Charizard, or, getting excited about the references and the other characters that they have in there and stuff like that. But as an overall movie, pretty good. It's fine. It's structured decently. It's never boring. It's entertaining throughout. It's relatively interesting. It gives a good effort to put a little, twist thing in there, here and there, keep you interested in the mystery, the murder mystery, whatever. It's not bad by any means, but it's certainly not anything great either. Because I'm pretty much going to echo Nate. Ryan Reynolds did this movie a big favor. He was very good, very funny, very entertaining. Most of the laughs come from him, or something he's saying, or something Pikachu is doing with his voice in mind. And those are often the highlights. It's still not a bad movie. I wouldn't... if you like Pokemon, I would definitely go see it. Or, if you got nothing else to watch, just not a bad movie. But lowered my expectations, and I don't know, just a decent ride, but nothing crazy.
Okay, if it wasn't obvious yet, I'm the least Pokemon guy out of all of us. My mother insists that I was actually a pretty big Pokemon fan. I don't know where this time went, or I don't know what kid she was watching, but I don't remember that. I guess I have a decent amount of the cards and stuff, but I always remember myself being more into... I'm not trying to trigger anybody on the mic, but I was always more of a Yu-Gi-Oh guy.
Blasphemy.
I know.
No, I dabbled in both. I had a Yu-Gi-Oh phase. I was bigger in Pokemon, but I had a Yu-Gi-Oh phase for sure.
I was all about that Exodia life, son. That's all I gotta say. Nate, do you even know what that means?
Yes. You get all 5 pieces of them, it comes together. I'm cultured. Still like it.
Okay. I guess part of me kind of assumed that Pokemon didn't die, but kind of just faded away a while ago. And then I met Nate.
Oh, so naive.
But I know, and then I met Nate, and I was like, oh no, this is very much still a thing. And then Pokemon Go came out, and it was everywhere. Freaking celebrities running through Central Park looking for Pokemon, like a bunch of schizophrenics who have left the mental hospital.
I actually did it once. I happened to be in the city, I put it up, people running everywhere. I turned out a Venusaur by Central Park, and I joined the mob.
And I think that caused me to kind of reassess, okay, what is so popular about this? And I think it's just the unique creations of the Pokemon in general. Having said that, when Detective Pikachu focuses on Pokemon in general, pretty much in any setting, whether it's Ryan Reynolds, like you guys were saying, basically playing PG Deadpool, leaning into the different references and stuff, all these little cameos by different characters, when the actual Pokemon that are featured pretty hardcore are stealing the show, the movie's awesome. It's really good. It has some really simple, fun kids movie charms when it's doing that. It's much more fun when it gets really crazy, especially in the last 40 to 35 minutes. The $150 million really comes into play in that last act because they do some really cool things with the Pokemon and with the special effects. And every single one of the Pokemon look great. Like, the effects are awesome.
I agree. I was definitely happy with how they all looked. Even some that might have looked a little uncertain in the trailer, I think paid off in the movie.
Anything with fur looked really, really good.
Especially Pikachu.
Yeah, Pikachu looked great.
Pikachu, obviously, they spent most of the time in them, and it paid off. Like, he is adorable. I think the movie struggled a little bit more with the skin textures and some of the scales and feathers. Those looked a little too choppy, a little too cartoony for me, that it didn't really look like it was a real-life Pokemon.
There's one specific Pokemon that I thought, like, okay, that kind of looks a little plasticky. And I'm going to reveal what that is in spoilers, because I don't want to reveal which ones are featured heavily and stuff. So everything Pokemon-wise, great. But, and I don't want to be the butt guy. Oh, that sounded weird. But
what did you watch before podcasting?
That was an accident.
That was a great one.
Anyway, but I don't want to make it sound like I'm gonna be the high man here. I'm most certainly the low man here because I'm not connected to Pokemon characters. And for me, a lot of the times this was just kind of a blah, run-of-the-mill blockbuster. And a lot of that has to do with the story and the human characters, which we've already touched on. I never once found the central mystery even close to interesting. I found it predictable pretty much all the way through. They don't even make Pikachu and Tim work hard for these clues. Like, they're moving from piece to pieces based on, like, ridiculous plot contrivances or technology that, like, this movie's introducing just to get the story to move along.
Absolutely.
Exposition central.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the actual mystery, never, ever interesting to me. All of the human characters, garbage, in my opinion. Especially Tim. He's just kind of bland and naggy for most of the movie. And I like Justice Smith as an actor, but this is 2 straight movies now where he's been cast like that. I really hope they don't keep doing this to him, because he's really good in the show called The Get Down, which one of our friends worked on, by the way. But he's really good on that Netflix show, and he just has not gotten a role that hits that kind of level. So basically, the first 2/3 of this movie just really was not working that much for me, except in sporadic beats. And then eventually it won me back. So my rating will be more reflective of it winning me back. But overall, I was kind of meh on it, which I didn't want to be.
I think it's okay that you feel that way, because I feel like we're all in similar boats here. I don't think you need to worry about any of us smiting you with a Charizard or anything.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about Tim, and it kind of gets to my overall gripe with the movie as a whole. It kind of just comes to what Pokemon is all about. Tim is kind of a whiny guy who doesn't want to be involved with Pokemon whatsoever, and his arc is growing with Detective Pikachu and coming to accept Pokemon as they try to solve this mystery. It just seems so counter to what makes Pokemon as a franchise so exciting, and that's finding creatures and catching Pokemon and exploring the world of whatever region the game or story is based in. And if your main character isn't excited about exploring the world of Pokemon, your character's in the wrong movie. And I was really frustrated by Tim with that. I think video game movies in general struggle with, or just movie adaptations in general, because a lot of what makes video games so appealing is being able to explore the world at your own pace. You can blow through the story, or you can do side quests, or you can find whatever appeals to you in the game. But a movie has to have a story. And especially with Pokemon, which is so much independent exploration. For this movie to not really feature a lot of catching and battling and exploring was kind of a shame, I think. Missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes to my next point, which I mentioned my two big criticisms. This is more of just a little bit of a bummer that it was a missed opportunity to me. But I really felt like the actual environment of Rhyme City was underdeveloped. And by that, I kind of mean it's not really clear to me how this city works. Like, in some cases, Pokemon appear to be pets, and then in other cases, they seem to be self-independent beings.
Yeah, they really gloss over that.
I referenced earlier Zootopia, and kind of how good of a job that movie does at setting up the economics and the social structure of the city. I just wish they were more clear about how this city worked, because the villain's plan eventually is really important to understanding how Rhyme City works. And yeah, but like they never for me even nailed close to that.
They live, you know, like codependent, like together, but not like one owns the other. But then some kind of do. I was like, if they're just gonna keep going, okay. But I was very curious, and actually that part got me excited when they went to this city and there was just Pokemon walking around. I was like, please spend time here, please. I really want them to show this and allow us to experience this. This is what the fans are looking for. And we got a fair enough amount. And I agree with what you said way earlier. Whenever they focus on something specifically Pokemon based, the movie's fun. The movie's good and the movie's fun. So I think that works for them. But as far as Rhyme City goes, I was like, please establish more, show us more Pokemon. The movie's like an hour 45. I'll take the hour 55 if it's 10 minutes exploring and explaining Rhyme City.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think like the thing is, for me, I would never ever say that I like outright dislike this movie, but I will say that it frustrated me because there is potential here that I feel like is being left by the wayside a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to Nate talking about how it's meant for kids more.
Right, exactly. Very much geared for kids. It's not trying to be anything complicated.
Yeah. So that's a good segue into Nate's rating here, and we'll get into our ratings and then move into our spoiler section. If you're just joining us for the first time, we've got our different ratings across the board based on the seat scale. If we think a movie is great, it has no flaws whatsoever, we give it a Royal Throne. If it's a movie with minor flaws but is mostly great overall, we give it a plush recliner. If it's a movie with some pretty glaring flaws but it's pretty enjoyable overall, we give it a wooden seat. If it's a movie that's kind of the inverse of that, where it has a lot of flaws but it's got a couple of good things peppered in there, we give it a damp lawn chair. And then if it's a movie with no redeemable qualities whatsoever, we give it a sleazy outhouse. And if we think it is worth seeing in a theater, either with an audience or on a big screen, we give it a bag of popcorn moniker. So Nate, let's start with you.
Alrighty. The one thing I just do want to add is that the people that made this movie definitely cared about Pokemon. They litter this movie with tons of references. Like they talk about berries, they talk about battles. One of my favorite quotes from Pikachu is that he praises Arceus instead of praising God because that's the God Pokemon. little things like that to appeal to the hardcore fans like me. I agree with almost everything that we've said so far. The human characters are pretty weak. The Pokemon aspects are pretty strong. And the movie ends up kind of being in the middle. I think if I had to rate the story section, it would be a 2 out of 5. If I had to rate just Ryan Reynolds' performance, the movie would be a 4 out of 5. So right in the middle there is a wooden seat. It met expectations, but it did not surpass them, and I'm a little bummed that it wasn't one of the two extremes. I think this movie would have been a lot more fun if it was ridiculously bad or ridiculously good, and we're just kind of left with okay, Pokemon trainer and me, satisfied. I would love to see more stuff like this. I think the Pokemon designs have a lot of potential and are very well received by everybody. But just not quite enough of the good stuff for this attempt.
Mm-hmm. Jake?
I wouldn't say bag of popcorn moniker. As good as some of the visuals are and the Pokemon do look good, I wouldn't say you necessarily need to see this in theaters. I think you'll get the gist and you'll get a fine experience in or out of the theater. But as far as ratings go, I'm going to go with a solid wooden seat also. It's not a bad movie by any means. The story's pretty simple. Some of the human characters aren't particularly great. The Pokemon are definitely more interesting. But I think overall, I was thoroughly entertained throughout. I had an overall good time. I was enjoying myself. The movie flew by. Ryan Reynolds is a blast. And I just think overall it was a solid movie, worth the Worth the watch, entertaining. I don't think anybody would regret seeing it unless you just could not care less about Pokemon. Honestly, I would like to see a sequel. It might just be the inner child who loves Pokemon in me, and seeing these Pokemon be brought to life in a decent way on the big screen. But I would see a sequel for sure.
Yeah. And you know what, Jake? Me too. Like, honestly, I'm not even trying to be like...
Sarcastic?
No, yeah, exactly. No, I actually... there was enough here that worked for me that I'm excited to potentially see a sequel. This is going to sound like a backhanded compliment, and I really don't mean it this way. This is the best video game movie ever made. It is.
Dun, 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 dun.
But, like... It's still, like, teetering in between damp lawn chair and wooden seat for me, which really says something about video game movies in general. When this movie works, it really does. And we'll get into those moments that are awesome in the spoiler section. But there's just too much that kind of left me feeling blah and kind of disconnected at points to really give it a full recommendation. I don't think it needs the bag of popcorn, I agree. My audience wasn't vocal enough to kind of... you know, make it feel like a Pokemon crowd experience. If you go to like a Pokemon fan screening, I guess, if you're like me, you shouldn't be there. But like if you're Nate or Jake, you might have a great time with it. Otherwise, I think you can rent this and be fun with that. And see, like, damp lawn chair sounds too harsh for how I feel. And the rating I wrote down makes no sense. I wrote a damp lawn chair and you have to watch this movie, or a wooden seat and you have to watch the Yu-Gi-Oh movie instead. I don't know what that means.
What?
Wait,
I don't know.
Was that after a couple of drinks, a hard day? What was that?
No, I like got home and that was the first thing I wrote down.
I think I get what you mean, but I couldn't explain it either.
I'm gonna live by my Paddington 2 motto and be kind and polite so the world will be right. I'm gonna give it a wooden seat.
So me and Nate are like high-end wooden seats, you're a low-end wooden seat.
Yeah, I'm a the lowest end wooden seat possible. Still giving it a wooden seat. That'll do it for our non-spoiler review of Detective Pikachu. We've probably got a decent amount to say in the spoiler section. There's not a lot plot-wise to spoil in this one, but a lot of fun stuff that we want to get into. If you have not seen Detective Pikachu, do not join us. Join us at the end of the show. If you have seen it, come with us.
Whoa! Oh, spoiler alert.
Spoiler! Spoiler!
Excuse me, spoiler alert!
Alright, so to talk about some Pokemon in the Pokemon movie, I don't know that I had a specific favorite in this one, but I was happy to see certain ones in there. But as a kid, I loved Gengar. There's something about Gengar that was just really cool and really interesting and really fun. A ghost type. He's fighting Blastoise in the movie, which I thought was also really cool. And I was very happy to see him in here. The little kid in me was like, yes, they brought in Gengar. And I was very, very happy to see that. Likewise, I was toward the end of that whole scene where they're in the cage battle thing. The Magikarp to Gyarados, I was very happy to see. I thought that was really cool.
I was
happy
fun.
to see that.
Magikarp to...
Yeah, the fish to the giant sea serpent.
Oh, yes, that was cool.
Yeah. I love that was played off as a joke at first, and then they actually just followed through with it.
Yeah, because the joke was
really
funny, and then seeing it on screen was like, oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, that was freaking cool. That was awesome.
That was really fun.
Guys, I think I'm in love. I think spiritually, I'm a Psyduck.
I knew you were going to go there.
I feel like a born-again Christian, but about Psyducks.
Massage my feet or I'll explode.
He's literally he's a walking atomic bomb. He's like Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen, only a duck.
Oh, he's fun.
Yeah. My favorite scene in the entire movie is when he out of the Greninjas. Takes them, wipes them off the map just by like freaking out. That was cool.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We brought up Pikachu before. Even taking out the Ryan Reynolds part, he's just animated so well.
Yeah.
He looks like a real thing. Adorable as all heck.
Right. He looks amazing, and his power set when they finally let him use it is awesome.
Yeah. Other shout-outs Pokemon-wise, the inclusion of Ditto was really crazy.
They used that character great.
Yeah, that was clever.
That's something that does not really appear in the games or the shows ever, as a Ditto impersonating another person. But really, really cool. See, I think that was the one plot twist that I did not see coming. And looking back at how weird some of the human characters were acting earlier in the movie made a lot more sense because it was a emotionless Ditto. Really, really
When watching this movie, I went, good, that's the effort that I was hoping to see.
Yeah. Even as a non-Pokemon fan, I also know, I mean, you know everything about, Charizard's awesome, and they use him really well. But I mean, I love what they did with Mewtwo here, because I've always had the idea in my head that Mewtwo's kind of a villainous Pokemon, and they completely subvert that by the end of it. I thought that was a really clever thing to do there.
Yeah, and if you want to be fun with it, technically this Mewtwo's canon with the original Pokemon movie and the sequels that have come out since. There was a made-to-TV movie where Mewtwo was the good guy trying to save other Pokemon, and this is totally in line with that and with the original games.
He's kind of like an anti-hero then.
Yes.
Interesting.
I was pleasantly surprised with the variety of Pokemon we got, and not even just the quantity of designs. I think interviews said that they made like between 60 to 80 unique Pokemon for this, which is a good chunk to animate.
Yeah.
And I never really felt it got stale. There was always a new Pokemon to look at in the background without completely overwhelming you. And a lot of non-Gen 1 Pokemon in there. Like, you had a lot of extras aside from the 151 that's appealing to the nostalgia aspect of this movie. You definitely got the sense that they were appealing to newer fans that are just getting into Pokemon now.
Right, like a good balance.
Very, very good balance. So I was very pleasantly surprised.
You know what my favorite gloss over moment, like just kind of in passing, was when they first get to Rhyme City and they're kind of establishing what it's like. Machamp is directing traffic around Snorlax who's sleeping in the middle of the road. Awesome.
I'm a big Snorlax guy, so I noticed that immediately.
Like, some kids were chuckling, and I was probably laughing harder than anybody else in the theater watching Machamp direct traffic around a Snorlax in the middle of the road. I just thought that was so funny.
Who was the Pokemon that was like serving drinks at the bar? Black as Night, and you just go, "Rah!" Like that's
Ludicolo.
Yeah.
I watched that part on a loop in the trailer to make myself
His
laugh.
sound effect is very funny.
Yeah. Very good stuff. Do we want to turn into negatives?
Yeah, we should talk about the humans, because we've had too much fun here.
Or the big twist at the end, no?
What a stupid plan. Just such a dumb, like, so the whole idea is that Bill Nighy's character, by the way, like, by the time we saw he was crippled, I'm like, well, okay, he's the bad guy. Like, when is a crippled guy a good guy in these movies? Like, ever. Besides Professor X.
Right, that was my only one.
Right, he wants to merge Pokemons and humans together as kind of like, oh, they evolve, but, like, we can't evolve. He can just do this for himself. Why does he, like, need to involve the entire city in this? I just don't understand. Like, he doesn't give any of the humans a choice. And he has the same plan as the Joker from the 1989 Batman. Like,
and it's very clear that the little headset thing is what lets him link with Mewtwo. But then he leaves Tim Goodman's character in the room to just be able to take it off.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it was a silly plan, and it kind of came out of nowhere because we were just kind of told that, oh, Mewtwo has the ability to merge human and Pokemon souls. Even though we never see that outright, they just kind of said, oh yeah, Mewtwo can do this.
Yeah. Guess what we're going to have Mewtwo do now?
yeah.
I thought it was mildly interesting, like his philosophy. Pokemon can evolve themselves, so we should be able to too. Right, okay. But then in execution, I was like, no.
If they had kept it more personal, like he is just greedy and wants this for himself, I think it actually would have worked better. But like, don't get other people involved in your nonsense.
Yeah,
like,
nonsense is a
why
good
does
word.
the whole city have to be in on this?
It was very odd. Very odd. As cool as Mewtwo is as a Pokemon, as a character in this movie, I found him so cringy. Every time he talked, and I was kind of annoyed that he moved his mouth when he talked, because he has telepathy, he doesn't need to.
Yeah.
But he sounded so preachy. The father and the son shall be reunited. And I'm like, calm down. You're a Pokemon. You're a big purple psychic cat. You're not Jesus. Tone down the...
I mean, they treated him like Jesus. He brought Pikachu back from the dead. Like,
yeah, like... As much as I love Pokemon, it was a little overkill.
Since we're on that Mewtwo healing Pikachu part, close an arc of this review. Bulbasaur was the only Pokemon that I thought kind of looked iffy. Like, they looked kind of shiny and weird, like the effects weren't done. That was the only one I had issues with.
He's supposed to be a frog, like a mix between a frog and a dinosaur. So I can see him looking a little shiny if they wanted to go for that. But I agree. I said it at the beginning. I think all the Pokemon with just regular skin look a little too plasticky.
It's more of a nitpick than anything. It really didn't detract,
Exactly.
but I was kind of...
Yeah.
It was like them standing next to Pikachu didn't do them any favors. So. Can we talk about terrible journalism in movies?
Ugh. Yep.
This girl, Catherine Newton, I like her as an actress. I think she has a bright future. I think she was doing the absolute best she could with this character, but this character makes no sense. She's like an intern or like a fluff journalist, and she just happened to have stumbled upon this like huge story and like doesn't actually do any of the legwork until Tim comes to them. You suck. You fell backwards into a promotion. She's the April O'Neil of these movies. Like,
ditto. I think she's gonna do well career-wise. Like, she's very good in Big Little Lies, and I've seen her in something else that she was good in. But I think her character is just not really written well at all here.
All right, I'm going to put my foot down as the host. We got to start wrapping up soon.
Well, we also didn't talk about a major plot point. His dad being...
Yeah, which I thought was kind of obvious.
I wasn't sure if I was smart or not because I was surrounded by younger kids who all gasped at the same time when it was revealed. Yeah, literally, like...
Jake turns around and looks at them. You idiots.
Yeah. It took you this long? I put it together when Pikachu has the emotional sit-down talk of, I'm sure your dad would give you a big hug right now if he was here. And then I was like, that's pretty specific. And why is it that nobody else is able to communicate with Pokemon and your dad's missing? He's inside you somehow. I just don't know how, but he's in there.
It's that scene from the Mark Wahlberg comedy where he goes like, why the would he say that?
Yeah, pretty much. What, Ted? Is that Ted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically that.
It's actually really funny reading a lot of like the Twitter and Reddit reactions to that scene because a lot of people didn't expect the dad to still be played by Ryan Reynolds after he got out of the Pikachu.
I actually wasn't sure.
Well, what were you expecting?
Well, I wasn't sure because I was like, is Ryan Reynolds strictly voiceover? Because they're going to have to change the dad's voice, like, significantly, unless that's just how Pikachu portrays the dad's voice. Like, I really wasn't sure what to expect there.
As soon as we had our second shot where the dad's face was masked, I knew it was going to be Ryan Reynolds. Fun twist, but it wasn't a particularly shocking twist.
The fact that their faces kept getting like blurred and stuff. How many times did they use that like technology where it's like, oh, we can recreate the crime scene except for all the information that's actually important? Like,
yeah, very convenient when they need it.
So there were two things. One, it's like, okay, this technology is just to get them from plot point to plot point. Two, there's clearly information being withheld. So Bill Nye's the villain. Like, he is not telling them very specific things. Just, it was stupid. A stupid plot device.
Yeah, and we talked about it briefly, but again, the exposition is kind of off the charts for everything plot related. That's kind of the fun thing about a mystery movie, is that you can have your detectives like analyze it Sherlock Holmes style, and then you can have a flashback scene where you're like recreating the scene in your head or whatever. I don't know why they needed to focus on hologram technology as its exposition.
All right, guys, let's start to get into our final thoughts here. So we're going to pivot over to you, Jake. Last word here on Detective Pikachu.
The movie's at its high when it's focusing on Pokemon details, Pokemon characteristics, anything Pokemon centered. The movie actually does succeed pretty well, and I wasn't sure about that going in. But it succeeds. It brings in a lot of Pokemon that people would want to see, but it definitely needed better human characters, a story that wasn't so predictable. I'm not going to bash it too much because it was still fun. It was still entertaining. It wasn't a bad movie. And I think it's worth the watch, truthfully. I think it was a solid movie.
Mate?
I was hoping for something ridiculous, and it ended up just being okay. And it's a decent start if Pokemon wants to continue a live-action franchise. There's definitely the potential there. Everything that they do with Pokemon absolutely makes the movie worth it. It's just the human elements and the plot elements that need a lot of work when they get around to sequel time. I just want to give a big old hug and shout out to Ryan Reynolds, who was absolutely hilarious the whole way through. The best scene in the movie by far is him sadly singing the Pokemon theme song on that bridge.
Yeah, that was good.
That was so good.
Hands down. And I doubt we will see Ryan Reynolds again in future movies just because his dad's not a Pokemon anymore. What do you want? I think it's overall a good thing just to keep expanding the rest of the world.
Right, I don't need to see Justice Smith again either.
Yeah, I don't need to see any of these characters again, or even the city. I just want to see more and more Pokemon.
Maybe we'll get Chris Pratt as a Charmander.
Whatever floats your boat.
Danny DeVito as a Snorlax. Calling it.
Yeah, so Warner Brothers, Nintendo, whoever wants to take this on, my personal pitch, if you want to take something straight from the games, take the plot from Pokemon Black and White. That's solid stuff there. Or just make a whole new region and whole new characters, and let's catch Pokemon. Let's battle with Pokemon. Let's explore a brand new world. I think that's its strengths, and that was the best part of this movie.
basically, just to boil it down, Pokemon stuff good, human character stuff bad, story forgettable, overall movie kind of iffy. If I saw it on basic television again, I'd watch it, but as not a huge Pokemon fan, I don't know if I'll ever truly invest in this again. We'll see. Decent movie, nothing special. Let's move on through this great summer of 2019. That will do it for our review of Detective Pikachu. Before we put this show away in our Pokeballs, I don't know if that made any sense, but
It's fine. I'll allow it.
go ahead. Nate, where can they find us on the internet?
Alrighty, here's how you can get in touch with us. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Middle Seats. You can also listen to us on the go on all your podcast platforms, including SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. For questions, comments, and updates on the show, keep an eye on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at The Middle Seats. And if you like what you hear and you want to see more content, let us know and spread the word.
Like we said, it's a busy summer here. We get a lot of movies to talk about next time around. Stick with us here over the next couple of weeks. Should be a fun time. That'll do it here for this week's episode of the Middle Seats podcast. For Nate Lungarini and for Jake Hensler, I'm Andrew Auger. Keep that seat warm, everyone. We'll be back soon.